Hello everyone, and before I start up the episode proper, I do want to say I'm sorry for not putting this up yesterday. I was going to, but the thing is, it's really bloody warm over in the UK now, and yesterday I'd had a beer, and when I started recording it was kind of a mess. I wasn't like super drunk because I only had one can of beer, and I wasn't like really depressed or sad or anything. It was just a lot of it was a mess, and I didn't really want to subject people to that. I know you're probably used to my videos not being like top quality stuff, but yeah, I just had to get that out of the way really quick. So, yeah, we're going to move on to the actual episode's intro now. I'm sorry for not putting this up yesterday. I've said the reasons why, so let's move on. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first part of my Chris Cornell retrospective miniseries in Backtracking. For what you could call part one, even though I won't be listing them as parts, I'm going to be covering his first band in Soundgarden. Formed in 1984 in Seattle, Washington, Soundgarden were vital to the 80s grunge boom. In fact, they are one of two Washington-based bands to erupt from the grunge scene over there, the other obviously being Nirvana. But Soundgarden do things a little bit differently, adding more experimentation, psychedelic elements, and an overall slightly prettier sound to things. And before we get to the main episode, I know I've said it before, either in video form or on Facebook status form, but rest in peace, Chris Cornell. The world truly is poorer without you. So with that said, let's do this. It's Backtracking, and this time, it's Soundgarden. We start with the band's debut album, Ultra Mega OK, released on Halloween in 1988 through SST Records and produced by the band themselves alongside Drew Cantlett. There are some interesting facts about this album. First of all, there's a couple of cover songs. The first is the track Smokestack Lightning, which was originally by a band named Howlin' Wolf. The other technically isn't a cover. It's the album's closer titled 1 Minute of Silence, the title of which is a reference to the song 2 Minutes of Silence by John Lennon. No instruments are played on either song, I think, but you do hear something being unplugged or what sounds like a switch being turned off in the Soundgarden version, so it's a little bit weird. It also, the Soundgarden version does not have the part by Yoko Ono, which is always a plus. Anyway, back to the facts. Secondly, the album is the band's shortest work at just under 43 minutes, and lastly is with the producer himself. The band and Drew apparently didn't really see eye to eye, as Drew wasn't too familiar with the Washington grunge scene. The band weren't big fans of the way he tried to capture the album, and to be honest, I was completely fine with how it turned out. It was 80s grunge, it really didn't have a root besides the grit of its own sound. Fusing other genres with it on this album, like older heavy metal and rock and some hardcore punk influences, it probably didn't make the producer's job any easier. Also, I will say that I like the album, but goodness me is it really weird. Granted, the title of it should have given that away already, as will future titles, but we'll get to those when we get to them. Let's go through the lineup first. Chris Cornell as lead singer and rhythm guitarist, Kim Thale as lead guitarist, Hiro Yamamoto on bass, and Matt Cameron on drums. Anyway, back to the weird stuff about the album. So the track Circle of Power has lead vocals by Yamamoto instead of Cornell, and it's the only Soundgarden song in history where this happens. Cornell, for the record, no pun intended, takes up bass on the song. Excuse me, I had something in my throat. Also, for the intro track titled Flower, Kim said that was the first time he ever blew in his guitar strings. As someone who's done that before on my own guitar, it does make a cool sound, and on the song you can hear it yourself as well. It's right in the intro, it's done in time with the rhythm of the drumming. Yeah, it's just a little cool thing. Another cool factoid is the two tracks 665 and 667, which are just over a minute 30 and just under a minute respectively. Apparently both songs were meant to parody the idea of Satanism being used in rock and metal. Obviously 665 and 667 are both references to 666, which is the quote-unquote number of the beast, even though it's 616, as we all actually know. Hail Satan. You've got to remember though that this was the 80s. A lot of people still believe that now, which is kind of stupid. Even with all of its strangeness, though, the album was nominated for a Grammy for Best Metal Performance in 1990, but lost to one by Metallica. Speaking of performances, let's do those. Chris Cornell's voice truly is a thing of beauty, with a great rasp to it, balancing some good screams and singing, with his lyrics about the music industry, critics, and fame being kind of difficult to hear, but they're present. He has some good riffs, as does Kim, who also shows a few good solos. Hero's bass work is pretty good, showing through with a murky, heavy slide and some really good riffs. And Matt's drumming isn't too bad either, with good work and really great timing. Standout songs include Flower, Head Injury, Nazi Driver, yes, that's a name of one of the songs, Mood for Trouble, and my favourite in Beyond the Wheel. Ultra Mega OK is a weird title for a weird album, but it has this charm to it that I really can't quite describe, so it's best to listen to it for yourself. I can recommend it, even though it might weird you out a bit first, it's still a really good album. We follow up with their second album, Louder Than Love. Released almost just a year after their debut, there are a few changes to this one. First of all, the band still produces, but they do it alongside Terry Deck this time, with Joe Canlett nowhere to be found. With a new producer comes a new record label too, with the band switching SST for A&M. There's a lot of initials. WTF is up with that? Anyway, the lineup itself is unchanged, and the album's length is just about 10 minutes longer than Ultra Mega OK. The album also has a lot more weirdness going on, but it's taken a lot more seriously than their debut, with the only example of a parody being their song Big Dumb Sex, which was written in reference to how subtle glam metal bands at the time tried to be with sexual references in their own music. At a time where glam/hair metal, which is what it's better known as, was all the rage, it's kind of nice to have a song that saw those often forced metaphors for sex and just take the piss out of them. Then again, the song itself does contain a grievous overuse of the word fuck, which did net the band a parental advisory label. Also, while we're on the subject of lyrics, there's some really dumb stuff happening on this album. Sure, in terms of instrumentation, sound, and experimentation, it's really good. There's more of a rock influence, some stoner little things, and there's many odd time signatures, and as there is on all albums by Soundgarden, and most of the songs are played in drop D, and the instruments themselves just sound overall better. That's not to take away anything from Chris Cornell's voice, as it still sounds fantastic, with the production's polish helping him to sound a lot better. But there's just a lot of stupid lyricism going on. It's not that it's too repetitive, it is a tiny bit, but not much, but it's just really, really stupid. Everything else about the album is pretty good, though. Behind the scenes, things didn't go so well. During sessions, bassist Hiro Yamamoto basically came and went as he pleased, and after the recording was over, he left the band for good to go back to college, feeling like he wasn't contributing a lot. This led to a mild issue for the band as he wrote most of their songs on the first album, and this time Chris Cornell had to step up, writing 7 out of the album's total of 12 songs. But at least things went better with their choice of producer, so that's a good sign. Let's speak about 2 songs which I feel have the most interesting backstories, Fall on Kevin's Mum and I Awake. So let's focus on the first one first. Apparently the song was inspired by a friend of Cornell's who slept with another friend's mum. That's just the title. It does make for a good little story of friendship and some betrayal, but still, it is a little bit weird to have the title called that. Which I think Chris actually came out with the words themselves, like he said it was Fall on Kevin's mum, or he was told by the third friend that it was Fall on Kevin. No, he was told by the friend that slept with Kevin's mum that I was Fall on Kevin's mum. It's weird. Next up is the song I Awake. The lyrics of the song were written on a note by a woman named Kate MacDonald, who was Hiro's girlfriend at the time. In the late 90s, when the internet was starting to take off, rumours began to circulate that Yamamoto wrote some lyrics on the back side of the note after writing the music for the song. When Yamamoto gave the aforementioned note to Chris Cornell, he allegedly gave him the wrong side, aka the one containing Kate's words to Hiro and not the lyrics, and those were chosen as the actual lyrics of the song. Just some cool little facts, and I like bringing those little weird things up. It's just, I just enjoy doing it. Anyway, onto the performances. It's nice to hear more solos from Kim, who does some good shredding as well as great riffs. Chris's own riffs aren't too bad, his vocal work improves at the cost of really shite lyrics. But they are about betrayal the environment, and I think Addiction, I don't know, they're as hard to decipher as they are to listen to. Hiro's bass work is pretty good and kind of underrated with a good groove and beat, and Matt's drumming is very understated as well, as he puts in a good performance on the skin. Pardon me again. Standard songs include Hands All Over, Gun, the studio title track in Loud Love, No Wrong No Right, and my favourite in Power Trip. Louder Than Love tones down the weirdness, ramps up bad production, and has an improved vocal performance from Chris Cornell at the risk of banal lyricism. I'm sort of on the fence a bit about the album itself, but it's not overall bad, so I can kind of recommend it. Next up is the band's third album, Bad Motorfinger, released in 1991 and produced by the same people through the same label. The only change is in bassists. As I mentioned earlier, Hiro Yamamoto up and left after the recording sessions for Louder Than Love were over, so the band got a new bassist in Ben Shepherd, and he does a really good job. There are, however, some changes related to the album itself for this one, so let's go through those. First of all is the writing process. It was much more shared, and you can hear that in the album structure, but the best part was the inclusion of Ben Shepherd himself. It helps that Soundgarden was Ben's favourite band before he joined, so that's a really good start to the relationship, I think. I can't speak today. Anyway, the album was taken a lot more seriously than their previous 2, All parody songs are pretty much gone, and it's nice to hear the band actually take themselves a bit more seriously and start working together more cohesively. It's something you can hear a huge difference in as well. Whereas their first two albums, as good as they are, felt a bit rushed at times, this one takes a little bit more time to establish itself, but it's not slow in any way, and it keeps that fury and pace that Soundgarden really don't get enough credit for. It's well balanced with much stronger songwriting, more experimentation, and it just has this much more mature feeling approach. It's still a fun album and a blast to listen to, but there's more sensibility going on with Badmotorfinger. It's just really nice to hear that. What else is nice to hear is the sound. There's still that classic mix of heavy metal and grunge, but there's a much better balance to things, and it really shows. In terms of lyrics, they're a bit more transparent and kind of more personal, with Chris Cornell wanting to paint pictures more than tell stories. There is stuff about the government, the environment, the economy, and some about religion. Let's focus on that last subject with one of the album's better known and more controversial songs, titled Jesus Christ Pose. Yeah, even the title itself is just a bit more controversial. Also, sorry, I'm really sweating, and I have something like a hair just above my eyes, really weird. The song was written about famous people who use the cross as a way of being persecuted by their own public, which, as we know, is a huge pile of bullshit when that happens, and it still happens today, which is kind of dumb. Anyway, moving on. There is a bit more of a political look to things as well, with the final song titled New Damage taking a few small swings at right-wing politics and how bad they are, and as we all know, they kind of are bad. But let's start talking about that for a moment, as I kind of want to talk about the album's cover art. Now, the album itself is iconic for Soundgarden, not least of all because of the really cool cover. It's this weird spiral thing with the band's name in big, bold red letters at the top, and the album's title seen in the triangle in the center of the spiral. It's just really cool. It's kind of difficult to explain, so you will have to bring up a picture for yourself, and I'm really lazy with editing, so I'm not going to add a picture of it myself, so just click on Google and look for it. Anyway, enough distractions, onto the band. Chris Cornell's voice just sounds a lot better. It's easier to listen to, it's still passionate, raw, and sounds amazing as it effortlessly belts out his messages about politics, religion, and how bad fame can get, and he plays some really solid riffs of his own. Kim's guitar work is awesome with more solos, more effects on his guitar, like using a wah pedal and using odd but really cool guitar tunings. It's all just great, as is Ben's bass work, which is good, really good for his first Soundgarden appearance, with a really nice groove on the 4th string and really awesome timing, and Matt's drumming is still great as well. Awesome patterns, rhythm, and just a really good work ethic. Standout songs include Rusty Cage, Jesus Christ Posed, Somewhere, The Great Closer in New Damage, and my favourite in Searching with My Good Eye Closed. Badmotorfinger might look and sound a bit transparent, but its main message is very clear. When Soundgarden start to take themselves seriously, you better watch out. I can recommend this one with no issue. Next up is the band's 4th album, Super Unknown. Released in 1994 through A&M again, it does have a slight change in production. Soundgarden are behind the booth again, as they are for pretty much every album, but this time they traded in Terry Day for the much better known Michael Beinhorn, or Beinhorn, or however you say his name. I've covered him before in the series, so it's nice to see a familiar name pop up on the show, even if I can't pronounce it properly. Anyway, the album would thankfully be the band's last to have words glued together to make up a title, with the exception of Lead and Love. Also, I guess Ultra Mega OK might count as well, but Ultra Mega is still all one word there, even though Ultra and Mega are two separate words, so... Wow, that is a weird tangent. Back to the album. It is the band's longest piece of work at over an hour and 10 minutes, and it's also the album that brought the band to a more mainstream audience with the song Black Hole Sun, which was my first Soundgarden song. Also, the video for that is really bloody weird. Also, the song itself doesn't really make much sense, as it's apparently about being in a surreal dreamscape. Actually, in terms of lyrical content, the album is a lot darker than you'd think it would be. Whereas their last album managed to balance out mature and still fun, this one isn't as fun. Fun to listen to, yes, but with more focus on things like, suicide, drug addiction, depression, love, loss, and death. It's really hard to wear a smile on your face when you listen to it. It's really weird to think, though. The album is so dark, and it was a surprisingly successful attempt to break through to a more mainstream audience. That's a real huge rarity in music, and it just shows a good amount of integrity on Soundgarden's part. Back to the weirdness of the songs for a bit. There are some really interesting stories surrounding pretty much all the songs, but that would take way too long to go over, and this episode's long enough as it is, so I'll just go over the album's final track, titled Like Suicide. What happened with this one was a bird had flown into the window of Chris Cornell's house, and Chris had to kill the poor bird with a brick to end its suffering, as it was extremely badly injured and couldn't fly. So, that was the thing. Most of the songs on the album have a somewhat metaphorical meaning, but to have one so literal as to be about assisted suicide for an animal, I mean, bloody wow. Speaking of Chris Cornell, though, this is the album where he found that signature voice of his. There's less screaming, and he found more of that signature clean singing that we all know him for now, even expanding his range with high notes and even some falsetto. That's a hell of a range to have, and his is just really good, as always. Speaking of range, there are more psychedelic influences on this album, but they don't overtake them. The production adds to that nicely as well as it keeps things brilliantly balanced and really nicely polished and sounds fresh. Also, this is Soundgarden's only album with an actual title track, so that's a cool little thing. Well, okay, that's unless you count Loud Love from Louder Than Love, which is kind of a title track, but not really, so there you go. Also, before we get to the performances, I want to talk about the album's 8th track titled Spoon Man. Now, in a dark album full of references to murder, suicide, drug abuse, death, and so on, we have one song that's about a guy named Otis the Spoon Man, who is a real person street performer. I have no idea if he's still alive today, I hope so. And yes, he performed on the song, playing the spoons near the end. It's weird and awesome, and also the band played with pots and pans on the song, so strange. Speaking of the band and performances, they do really well in this one, with Chris Cornell really having found that voice, that really brilliant voice of his. More cleaner on this album, and he provides some good riffs as well. And some intelligent, if really dark lyrics. Ben's bass work is once again really good, with his good slide never really declining, adding some awesome scales as well. Kim's guitar is awesome, and he gets some solos, which is good, as he has really great solos. And Matt's drumming has picked up the pace on speed more than anything, just sounding a lot quicker and more technical. Standard songs include Black Hole Sun, the title track, Head Down, The Day I Tried to Live, and my favourite of the album's final track, Like Suicide. In an attempt to become more well known, and it did work, the band went a lot darker and a lot more serious, and with better production and performances, along with more experience and a level of accessibility under their belt by this point, it pays off really well. I can recommend this one. We then move on to their 5th album, Down on the Upside, released in 1996 through A&M again, and this time switching Michael Beinhorn, him, for another familiar name in Adam Casper, who I also have covered before. This would be the band's last album for the A&M label, as tensions between the members grew to a huge level. So, sadly, yes, they did split up not long after the album was released, which sucks, but they do return. Obviously, before we get to that, since that's the last album in the episode, let's focus on this one. So, in terms of sound, it's probably their best in terms of structure, and it's got fewer odd time signatures. They're still there, but not as prominent. And also, despite having Adam Casper to help, the band actually produced pretty much the whole album on their own. In terms of tone, it's the polar opposite to Super Unknown. It's got more of a traditional rock feel, with Chris Cornell not screaming that much on the album, and the focus less on the instruments and more on his vocals. Down on the Upside is kind of an attempt to build upon the mainstream success that they've achieved on Super Unknown, and its lyrical content overall just sounds a bit more positive. There is a little hint of darkness here and there, but it's a surprisingly positive sounding album all in all. Hell, even in terms of instruments used, there's a huge change. On Super Unknown, they went all over the shop. I mean, they had a dude playing the spoons for crying out loud, and he also had pots and pans. But Down on the Upside, the only other instruments really are piano, a mandolin, and a mandola. And yes, there is a difference. I think a mandola is a bit more traditionally acoustic, as it has a hole in the middle of its body like normal acoustic guitars do. Yeah, I know about guitar anatomy, so what of it? You know, body, neck, head. I know the things. I just can't play guitar very well. Anyway, the album itself is really long, being only 5 minutes shorter than Super Unknown. As a byproduct of that, Down on the Upside drags itself out a little bit from time to time. There's a total of 16 tracks, and about 4 of them are pretty short for Soundgarden songs. Of those 4 songs, 2 are just about the 3-minute mark, one's just under 2.5 minutes, and one just brushes past 2 minutes. It's a good album, but there's just a lot of filler on it, I think. With all that being said, as I mentioned earlier, this was the album where things started to get heated between the band members, causing them to break up a year after the release. It would be the band's last album for a little while until 2012, and it's kind of weird to have all this backstage heat, especially considering how well everything was going for the previous 2 albums. It was pretty much the same lineup, but I guess it's because they'd been a band for too long by this point and this was their 5th album. I don't really know, but hopefully it wasn't all that bad, and I don't really have a whole lot of the story, but who knows. Anyway, on to the band members. Chris Cornell's riffs are still awesome, and his voice has a much clearer center on this one, and his lyrics sound a lot more positive in regards to relationships, being self-affirmed, and some stuff about his childhood and past too. Kim's own riffs are awesome, but there's really no solos from him, which is a huge detriment. He's still really good on the album, though. Ben's bass work is a little bit drowned out, but it still shines brightly from time to time, adding awesome grooves and really good force to songs. And Matt's drumming is also fantastic, with him showcasing more timing on than speed on this album, but it's still really good. Standout songs include Zero Chance, Blow Up the Outside World, Dusty, Overfloater, and my favourite, and Never the Machine Forever. Whilst it does suffer from a lack of experimentation, its production is great, the performances are solid, and the songwriting is a lot more positive, so I can recommend this one. And finally, we reach the band's 6th album, King Animal. Released through the 7 Foreign Republic labels in the US and Vertigo for the rest of the world, this would be the band's last album with Chris Cornell before his death last month, sadly, although it wouldn't be Cornell's own last album. We'll get to that in the next episode. Obviously, this is also the longest period between band releases, being 16 years since Down on the Upside. That just might be the biggest gap between albums I have ever gone over for the entirety of this series, or show. Anyway, in terms of production, Adam Casper returns with the band themselves, and despite this being the band's first album not released on A&M since their debut, Republic and Vertigo are both owned by Universal, as is A&M, so there's a nice little connection there. Anyway, in terms of sounds, it's pretty easy to tell that the band have aged, but it's certainly not for the worst. It is a much more mature album, and throughout its length, which is thankfully a much shorter affair this time around, you can hear how much more mature everything is. Think of the album combining the mature exploration of Bad Motorfinger, the more positive tone in terms of lyrics on Down on the Upside, and add a faster pace to things, and basically you have King Animal in a nutshell. That's the formula, and it works well. Whilst a lot of the signature Soundgarden sound is there is a more psychedelic influence from time to time, and one of the things that the band took into account was the sounds of other bands they performed with after their initial breakup. Now, the only one of those I'm remotely familiar with is the Chris Cornell-led Audioslave, which is obviously one of the episodes soon, but the other members didn't really do too bad, all being members of many other bands. Most notably of all, Ben and Matt were members of the band Well War Conspiracy, and Kim Thale was a member of the rock supergroup Probot and even helped out the President of the United States of America from time to time. By which I mean the band named the President of the United States of America, not the actual presidents. That would be a bit weird. Also, not to mention that Chris started his solo career not long after Soundgarden split and did a really good job. Anyway, I'm vaguely familiar with the Presidents of Probot, and I know pretty much nothing about Wellwater, and I'm familiar enough with Audioslave. But to say that King Animal sounds anything like Audioslave or possibly like any of those other bands would just be really wrong. Chris Cornell does a really good job of making all of his projects sound as different to each other as possible. Sure, he's still at the forefront, belting out really great tunes, but I guess his experience of being Soundgarden's frontman and the experimentation that the band often foots around with had an effect on Chris. That experimentation shows on King Animal too. It does add some brass instruments and a piano, which complements the overall sound rather well, and whilst I can't speak much on lyrics because I can't find out much about them, I will comment on them briefly. They do sound a lot more positive, and Chris Cornell just kind of sounds happier all in all, singing about his past, his personal demons, and some political stuff from time to time, but it doesn't go too overboard. He has some great riffs as well, as does Kim, showcasing awesome grooves and solos. The solos are back, yes. Ben's bass is still awesome, and although it doesn't show much on it, he still does a really good job providing a nice backbone and drive to things, and Matt's drumming speeds up as well, with that faster pace I mentioned earlier being thanks mostly to him. Standout songs include Bones of Birds, Been Away Too Long, which is a fitting title for a song, is the intro track as well, so cool. Halfway There, Attrition, and my favourite in Eyelid's Mouth, which is a weird name. If King Animal is the last Soundgarden album overall, it's a good note to go out on. Awesome performances, a more mature and positive feel, and better production value make for another great album. I can recommend this one. So, that's it for Soundgarden, possibly for now. I know that the band are still together, but just without Chris Cornell, which is sad. I'd say that my favourite album is probably Bad Motorfinger. Not only is the cover iconic in grunge and rock, but it's a great step forward in maturity for Soundgarden, showing that they could take the songwriting more seriously whilst having a lot of fun. Least favourite is maybe Louder Than Love. Whilst it tried to be less weird than Ultra Mega OK, it does suffer from some of production being a little bit repetitive and just being too weird and silly and having really stupid lyrics. Sorry. Anyway, I hope that you enjoyed this episode. I know it's gone on for quite a while. Join me next time where I'll be going over Chris Cornell's solo career. I'll see you all then, and yeah, just thank you for listening. You're awesome.